All right, cool. So going back to that weird right over here, you never can tell whenever stuff like that's happening if it's Yahweh wanting you to slow down or if it's Satan trying to come up against you. And I'm still not sure which one it is, but either way, I was like, you've got to be. It was one of those things that was almost funny because it was happening so much. And so, anyway, let's go to Father in prayer. Father, we thank you and bless you for all that you do for us, Father. We thank you for being here on this Sabbath day, Father. We praise you for the opportunity to dive into your word. Father, I pray that you would calm my nerves and help me to get to where I need to be in order to give the message that you would have. Make these words that come out of my mouth not be your word, not be my words, but be your words only, Father. And may it uplift the people. I thank you for all that you do for us, and I ask this in Yeshua's name. Hallelujah. So I'm already breathing hard because I was like running up in here and everything. So once again, like I always say, whenever I get started, I'm a country boy, but sometimes I can speak very quickly. And most of the time, I have written at the top of this, slow down, but once again, I forgot to do that. So we're going to slow down anyway. He's got me. All right, so if I say something too fast or anything like that, put your hand up and ask me about it, and that way I can hit it, because if I'm just saying it for the sake of me saying it, there was no profit in that, okay? So, who all's happy for it to be Sabbath? Woo! Man, I love the Sabbath, don't you? It is such a good command to be able to have that. And obviously, we're grateful for it. And today we're going to deal with a topic that's a command, and it absolutely has to do with love. Matter of fact, Laura was so nice to be able to touch on it already. Let's get our scriptures open. By the way, we're going to do a lot of scripture today. And I'm going to bounce through just a little bit because I know sometimes we've only got a certain amount of time, so it takes time to turn there. But I will read them to you and tell you where they're at. If you need to jot them down, if you want me to wait for you, I will wait for you. So you tell me what y'all prefer. And if we get short on time, let me know that, and I'll start bouncing through it quicker. But where we're going to start out at, we're going to be in Matthew 23, and we're going to read verses 36 through 40. All right, that's Matthew 23. We're going to read 36 through 40. Teacher, which is the great command in the Torah? And Yahshua said to him, you shall love Yahweh, your Elohim, with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your mind. This is the first and great command. And the second is like it to it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commands hang all the Torah and the prophets. Now, this is a great... Yes, ma'am? What did I say?
You said 23.
It is Matthew 22. You are absolutely correct. I read the wrong one. I read the right one on my paper. I just told you the wrong one. All right, let's do it again. Matthew 22, 36 through 40. All right, y'all in the right spot now? Am I in the right spot now? That's the question. I'll flip my page over. That way I am in the right spot. All right. One came to him and said, Teacher, which is the great command in the Torah? And Yahshua said to him, you shall love Yahweh, your Elohim, with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your mind. This is the first and great command. And the second is like unto it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commands hang all the Torah and the prophets. That's very interesting if you think about it. We just got commanded to love. And we got commanded to love in different kinds of ways. Now something else that's interesting from this, whenever they came and they asked Yahshua what was the great command, he didn't just say, well, I think it's this. He pointed directly to Torah. Y'all realize that? So the first one that he pointed to, where he's talking about love Yahweh, is the Shema. That's over in Deuteronomy 6. So let's turn over to that. Read it real quick. And read it in Spanish. Let's hear it in Spanish. I've never heard it in Spanish.
Okay. Wow. Oye Israel, Adonai tu Elohim, Adonai uno es, y bendito sea su nombre eternamente y para siempre. Y estas palabras que yo te mando hoy, las guardarás en tu corazón, las enseñarás diligentemente a tus hijos. Hablarás de ellas tanto en casa, tanto por el camino, cuando te acuestes y cuando te levantes. Las atarás como señal en tu brazo, como frontal entre tus ojos. Las escribirás en tus portones y en tus puertas. Amén.
I love it. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. What I got out of that was like two words. I heard corazón and I said porta. So write it on your door and write it on your heart. Or look out with all your heart, right? All right, so we're not going to read what she like quoted the whole thing. We're only going to read verses 4 and 5. So Deuteronomy 6, 4 and 5. Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your might. Now the second one that he said, love your neighbors yourself, is also found in the Torah, but it's over in Leviticus. So let's turn over to Leviticus 19. Leviticus 19, we're going to be in 17 and 18. All right, Leviticus 19, 17, and 18. Do not hate your brother in your heart, or prove your neighbor for certain, and bear no sin because of him. Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh. So get that, we are commanded to love. We're supposed to love Yahweh, we're supposed to love our neighbor. We even got another love that's in there that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. But what does that really mean to love? What does that word there mean? So I wasn't quite sure, so I went and looked it up in the Strong's Concordance over there in Matthew. And in Matthew, it says that it is G25, so that's in the Strong's Concordance, G25, and the word is agape. And we hear that a lot. People talk about agape love and stuff like that. And it just means to love. No big thing there. But it has another word over there that it says, compared to a Hebrew word, and it points us back to Hebrew 5:6-89, and that word is agape. And it means something a little more than just love, because love's kind of a broad term. There's all kinds of different loves. And this one says to breathe after. That is, to love, to dote on. That kind of love. And so if you put dote in there, you shall dote on Yahweh, your Elohim. You shall dote on your neighbor. I don't know about y'all, but whenever I think about doting, that's more than just, I love that cousin of mine. I don't like him, but really. That's a different kind of love. The kind that you have when you dote on somebody is you are pursuing them. You're constantly trying to make sure they are taken care of, and that you love them, and you tell them all kinds of great things about themselves, and that you're loving them in that kind of way. So doting is a different kind of love, and that's the word that it points to. So love's a pretty important thing, amen? All right, so much so that Paul wrote something in regards to it just to tell us how important it is. Let's go look over in 1 Corinthians. We're going to be in 1 Corinthians 13. Just so y'all know, there is no 1 Colossians. That's gotten me in trouble a bunch of times. 13. And we're going to read 1 through 13. Now, we hear this one a lot because it's normally like in weddings and things like that. Matter of fact, me and Ashley had it in our vows. But I want us to hear it for what it is, because I think it can apply more to just the marriage ceremony. All right, we're going to read in verse 1. We're going to go all the way through 13. If I speak with the tongues of men and messengers, but do not have love, I have become as a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophecy, and I know all secrets and all knowledge, and if I have all belief, so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I'm none at all. And if I give out all my possessions to feed the poor, and if I give my body to be burned, but do not have love, I'm not profited at all. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast, is not puffed up, does not behave indecently, does not seek its own, it is not provoked, reckons not the evil. It does not rejoice over the unrighteousness, but rejoices in truth. It covers all, it believes all, it expects all, and it endures all. Love never fails. And whether there be prophecies, there shall be inactive, or tongues, they shall cease, or knowledge, it shall be inactive. For we know in part, and we are prophecy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be inactive. And when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought as a child. I reasoned as a child. But when I became a man, I did away with childish matters. For now, we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know as I also have been known. And now belief, expectation, and love remain. These three, but the greatest of these is love. So Brother Shaul there thought love was so important that he put it up above all the rest of those things. It's no wonder that that is at the center of what the two great commands are. Yeshua even gave some commands about love. Oh, I jumped ahead, I'm sorry. Anyway, Yahshua pointed to the great commands. That's why Yahshua pointed to those two commands and pointed to it, because love was at the center of it. Now, I've got a great question for you. Is love something that you want? Is it?
Yes.
Come on, if y'all talk to me, I'll fall asleep.
Yes.
Yes. Is it a want, or is it something that you need? Well, we kind of need to know the definitions of those two things if we're going to be able to make a decision on that, aren't we? So I went and I just plugged it in. I typed it into want, which is really funny because once upon a time we opened up the book to look at what things were in the dictionary. Now we got to type it in. Anyway, I told you I'm in that weird phase right now. So, according to dictionary.com, want, it means to be needy or destitute, to have or to feel need. It's kind of interesting. It looks like it's kind of a both thing there. To be necessary or needed, to desire. Okay, that's a little bit different. To have a strong desire for, to have need of. So want's kind of an interesting thing. You can want something just because you desire something, but if something is lacking, you can be in want too. So want is kind of a broad term. Need, on the other hand, is different. Need, according to dictionary.com, says it's necessary duty. It's a necessary duty. A lack of something requisite, desirable, or useful. But this last one is something that's very important in regards to love. It says need, a psychological or physiological requirement for the well-being of an organism. So, is love a want or a need? We're going to find out here in just a minute. That is why love is at the center of the two great commands, because I believe that it is more than just a want. I believe it's a need that Yahweh put in place and commanded us to do it. I want you to check something out. You quoted the Shema, and it was wonderful. But something we leave out are the first couple of verses right before that. Let's turn back to Deuteronomy 6 real quick and read those verses. And while we're reading those verses, I want you to think about how it is a physiological or psychological requirement for the well-being of an organism. All right, we're Deuteronomy 6. We're going to read verses 1 through 3, and then we're going to jump down to 24 and 25. All right, Deuteronomy 6:1. And this is the command, the laws, and the right rulings which Yahweh your Elohim has commanded to teach you to do in the land which you are passing over to possess, so that you fear Yahweh your Elohim, to guard all his laws and his commands which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life, and that your days be, what's that word right there? Prolonged. So does that sound like it's something good for you when you keep the commands? Oh yeah, let's go on to verse 3. And you shall hear, O Yisrael, and shall guard to do, that it might be well with you, for your well-being, with you, and that you increase greatly as Yahweh, Elohim of your fathers, has spoken to you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Drop down to 24 and 25. And Yahweh commanded us to do all these laws, to fear Yahweh our Elohim, for our good always, to keep us alive, as it is today. And it is righteousness for us when we guard to do all these commands before Yahweh, as he has commanded us. So as we can see, when Yahweh says we're supposed to love him, the things that he's asking us to do to show him that we love him are for our well-being. They are for a physiological or a psychological requirement for our well-being when we love our neighbor as ourselves, and we love Yahweh with all of our being and all of our might and all of our stuff. Yahshua went on to go ahead and give some commands to his taught ones as well about what they should love. Turn over to John 13. Lost my place there for a second. I apologize. Remember John 13, 34, and 35. Yahshua says, a renewed command I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this shall all men know that you are my taught ones, if you have love for one another. By the way, that love there is the same word as over in the Matthew verses that we're reading earlier. So, can y'all see that love is very, very important? It is something that Yahweh is commanding us, and Yahshua is even reinforcing with, hey, I want y'all to do this with my taught ones. Can y'all see that? Once again, if y'all talk to him, I'll fall asleep up here. Yes. Yeah, got it. Okay. If it's that important, if Yahweh's talking about love, how much do we spend learning about how to love, How much do we learn to do better at loving? Do we really have a thing that we do in order to do that? I don't know about y'all, but for a while the answer was no for me. Now, I'll be honest. When I was a young man, I thought I was pretty good at love. Y'all laughing. I wasn't. I was strutting around. I told everybody I could even teach subjects on it. I had classes 101, 102, and even an advanced 103 on it. And I thought everything was great. I thought I was doing great at it. Now, y'all know who Mark Twain is? Mark Twain had something he wrote one time. He said something to the effect of, it's not what you don't know that will get you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so that's the problem. Because when me and Ashley first got married, y'all, to begin with, I knew I was good at love. I knew everything was great at love. We got married and it was still going good. And then all of a sudden, something changed. I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know what I was doing that was wrong. I just knew something changed. And it wasn't until we got introduced to a book called The 5 Love Languages by Chapman that I actually found out what the problem was. How many of y'all have read that book? Oh man, I'm so glad. Someone will be preaching to the choir. Y'all want me to just go home? All right, so Chapman, if you haven't read the book, go read it. If you just want to do the Cliff Notes version of it, he's even got a quiz, a pop quiz that you can take that'll pretty much tell you everything you need to know. So go to the 5lovelanguages.com/quiz, I think is the name of it. You can take the quiz and it'll tell you about it. But the long and the short of it is Gary says that there are 5 different ways that we show love in the world. Or 5 main ways. Ashley says there's 2 more. But they are acts of service, quality time, words of affirmation, gift giving, and touch. And most people will gravitate towards one of them, and that will be their primary love language. They will sit there and they will do one thing with somebody, and that's how they show love, because that's the way that they receive love. Now, one of the things that Gary points out is just because the way that you show love doesn't mean that somebody else receives that same type of love. So you may be giving all day long, but at the end of the day, it's not getting what you want. So what happened with us was, I'm a very high words of affirmation person, right? So whenever we got married, I'd come home, I'd get going to work, we started our business, and I was working from can to can, y'all. I was working from can to can. And I'd get up in the morning, I was in there making breakfast, I'd tell Ashley how beautiful she was, how much I loved her, how great she was, and I was out the door going to work. Then at lunchtime, I'd call her up, tell her thank you for the lunch she made me, I'd sit there, eat it, tell her how wonderful she was, how much I loved her, how beautiful she was, and then back to work. Then I'd come home, we'd make dinner with each other, do the same thing, I'd tell her how great she was, how much I loved her, and then it got time to go to bed. Remember, cane to cane. I'd go lay down in bed, she'd start talking. I'm like, oh, what you doing? It's time to go to bed. And she's still talking. I'm like, oh, hey, what are you doing? You know, I love you. It's time to go to bed. Anyway, I came to a head because she has this thing she calls me called no sleep Joey. And so I started, well, what happens to me is if I don't fall asleep near my sleep cycle, I'm up for another 2 hours. And it doesn't matter what time I went to bed. 5 o'clock came when 5 o'clock came. And so, anyway, I started getting grouchy. Well, come to find out, what was going on is I was sitting there giving my wife words of affirmation all day long. I was sitting there telling her with my whole heart how much I cared about her, how much I loved her, all these different things. But it turns out that was not Ashley's primary love language. Ashley's primary love language was quality time. And so I'm out here working from can to cane, which by the way was the secondary of my love languages because I'm high on acts of service as well. I was out there working from cane to cane, and I was making sure I was calling my brand new, beautiful, newlywed wife up, telling her how much I loved her, how awesome I thought she was. But she wasn't receiving that love. Instead, what she was getting was her love bucket was like this, like this, like this, and like this. And eventually, after we read this book, and we figured out quality time was Ashley's primary, it was a really easy fix. All we had to do was, I say all we had to do, this was what was happening at the time was, we dedicated at least, hear me, at least 30 minutes where she and I, in the evening, would sit down on the couch, and I'd touch her and she'd touch me, and we would just decompress, and she would tell me about her day, I'd tell her about my day. And that, all it took was 30 minutes to fill Ashley's love bucket all the way up. That was an easy fix for me. I was like, heck yeah, man, I'm back over to teaching my classes. But anyway, so oddly enough, Ashley wasn't a super high on words of affirmation. Now, what happened with this was before we got married, we didn't have the same that's not responsibilities is the right word. We didn't have all the stuff going on as we did because I was living at mom and dad's house, she was living at mama's house. We didn't have the same bills. We didn't have a new business that we were trying to start. Whenever we were off, we were together, we were stuck like glue. And so she was getting plenty of her quality time, and then she was telling me how great I was for giving her all that. I just didn't realize that was what was going on. But once we got married and we stepped over into that, and we were with each other, we weren't really with each other, we were just living in the same house. We went off and we started trying to show our primary love languages, and it was almost devastating. So I was very grateful for this book, and if you haven't read it, I really, really recommend that you go and check it out. But I'll give you some other, for instances, of it not just being a romantic thing, of how it can help you out. So I started learning that there were people in my life that had other love languages than what I'm used to. So I said Ashley was quality time, and mine was words of affirmation. I was very strong on words of affirmation and acts of service. Now, my niece and my dad and my daughter are real high touch. I'm talking about super high touch. My one niece, man, it's almost weird. It's like, but she is. She's super high on touch. My dad will go through great lengths and almost tackle people to hug them as they're walking out the door because touch means that much to them. All right? My mom and my son, my oldest son Seth, are high on gift giving. At least that's what I thought. All right? So these things are open to interpretation. As it turns out, my mom is not high on gift giving. She is an acts of service type person. See, she's not a things person. She's not going to go buy you a PlayStation or, just buy you a watch or something like that unless you're needing a watch because you need to tell time. What she does is she goes and she sees a need, something that somebody needs, and she will go buy that for them because she wants to be able to serve them. She's really good at getting people food. She's really good at when somebody's having a financial crisis to be able to go in and do stuff like that, make sure people have clothes, baby stuff, all those things. And so from the outside, it looks like you're buying things, but she sees it as I'm serving. So the love languages are very interesting because you may think it's one way, and it turns out it's a different way for the person. Now, mixing it up just a little bit, like I said, you have a primary love language, but they may not be, your secondary love language may not be the same thing. So like, I like to do acts of service. I really do. It's one of those things that I love to help people, and I don't want to hear about it, which is odd because I'm high on acts of service. I think it's because of what Yahshua said about not sounding a horn and being like the hypocrites. I just don't want my right hand to know what my left hand's doing. So I'll go over and I'll help somebody, and then I'm going to go and hide. That's what I'm going to do. Unless it's the dishes. Now, if it's the dishes or the laundry or anything like that, I want Ashley to come home, and she ain't got to say it loud. She's like, Joe, you did the dishes. Yeah, man, I'm good at it. It's good stuff. So it's funny how it works, all right? Said that part. Y'all accidentally printed this out like 2 fonts too small too, and so that's another thing, and I didn't realize until after it was too late. All right, so Ariel is a touch baby, but she's also a words of affirmation baby, all right? It's really funny. She'll almost attack you with words of affirmation. One time, we were at the rest area. We were going up to see Ashley's dad in Kentucky, and you go over Jellicoe Mountain, and right after you get over Jellicoe Mountain, there's a rest area over there on the right. Well, Ariel went in there, and she came up to the lady, she's like, "You're pretty." And this is like a little 4-year-old girl. And that lady was like, "Oh." And so they walked into the bathroom, that lady was in there, and she came out of the stall, and she said, "Honey, that just meant the world to me." And she handed my 4-year-old daughter, a $20 bill, and then walked out. And I was like, I don't think that should go that way. And she's like, "Let it be." But either way, Ariel is a really big words of affirmation person. But remember how I said that just because that's the way you give love doesn't necessarily mean that's the way that you receive love? I know people that if you try to tell them something good, they start squirming. Either that or they go and they walk away. I've got a friend named Amanda. She works in my attorney's office. She's funny. I love her to death. I can be back there with her by myself and I can talk to her. But if we're in the middle of a closing and I even mention her while she's in there, she's out the door. It freaks her out. I've got another friend. His name's Houston. He don't like touch. I'm talking about don't like touch. It's really funny because we'll go and ambush him on purpose. And so we'll get like a bunch of people to hold him and he's sitting there like just squirming like crazy. But it doesn't have to be. That's the extreme side of it. Ashley was not high on touch. Okay? And it depends on who it is. So like she has actually grown to like touch more as life's gone on. But remember, she was a single kid. She was the only kid in the household with a single mom. And so mom was there, but that was just not a thing that they did. In my house, my mom was all the time rubbing my head, scratching my back, picking my ears, all kinds of stuff. Not weird, right? But anyway, what happened. And so when we got married, she had to consciously think to touch like that, you know, and to be able to do things like that. And particularly when we had kids, because our children are touches as well, except for Seth. Seth doesn't like touch. But Ariel needed it. And in order to give somebody you love what they need, sometimes you have to actively think about what it is they need. So Ashley would get over there, and I think she even set a reminder, go give Ariel a hug, go touch Ariel, do something like that. She had to do the same thing with the words of affirmation for me, not with the dishes. We had that one covered, but just to come over and regularly tell me something good about me, tell something good about the kids. And so it's one of those things that you have to actively work towards. But once you start doing it, it becomes great, y'all, because people really start lighting up, realizing, oh my goodness, they love me. And it just makes relationships get so much better. So once again, y'all go look at Gary Chapman's website. It's the 5lovelanguages.com. Check it out, and it will have a thing to where you can go and do the quiz, and it'll tell you not only what your love language is, but what your secondary and what your third and fourth and fifth are. By the way, gift giving's way down here. I mean, down here on me. I'm not a things person, and so it's actually hard because when like Father's Day or birthdays come up, it's really hard to buy me something because I'm not a things person. I'd rather go do something with you. I don't need anything. If I need something, I'll go pick it up, you know, type deal. And so it's funny how that winds up working out. I had a whole lot of talking without looking at my points. Oh, let me say this about touch too. So not just about Houston, but Ashley used to have a friend that was like super high on touch. And she would come over and she would love on Ashley and stroke her hair. And even though this was a friend of Ashley, she's like, man, get off me type deal. So it's very important to realize that just because you like to give touch or give a love language in a specific way, it may actually make people uncomfortable. So realize that because you may be dealing with somebody that has trauma. You may be dealing with somebody that has sensory issues. You may have all kinds of different things going on. So just be wary of that as you go and try to express yours and pay attention because it may be it isn't that the person doesn't like you. It may be that's making them so uncomfortable they can't stand it. So just be aware of that. All right, I told you about Houston. I told you about Amanda. All right, let's go reread the 2 great commands over in Matthew. This is Matthew 22, not 23. We're going to be in 36 through 40. I should put 35 in there. And one of them who was learned in the Torah did question him, trying him, and said, Teacher, which is the great command in the Torah? And Yahshua said to him, You shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your mind. This is the first and great command, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And on these 2 commands hang all the Torah and the prophets. Now, how can we use the 5 love languages to be able to do the 2 great commands? Do you think that's a thing? Can we apply those to loving our neighbor? Is that hard? It might be hard if I don't know what they are, Joe. I just learned about them. Now, I'm not saying what I'm talking about. With the things I just told you, would it be hard to do that with your neighbor? Remember, you got to talk to me.
You have to get to know your neighbor.
You got to get to know your neighbor. All right? Well, your neighbors are all kinds of different people.
Yeah.
Could be the person sitting right next to you.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think it's possible? That was the second command. Do you think it's possible that the 5 love languages apply to Yahweh? Let's go check it out. Let's start with quality time. How many of y'all remember Daniel? Let's go look at Daniel 6. Daniel had a very interesting habit. Y'all remember what it was? Pray.
3 times a day.
3 times a day. Y'all think he was just saying to bless him when he ate? Oh, I don't think that's what it was. All right, so I got Daniel 6 through 3 through 5. Then we got a bounce and then bounce again. All right, Daniel 6:3. Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and the viceroys because of an excellent spirit that was in him. And the sovereign planned to appoint him over all the reign. You know what that did? That made the governors and the viceroys pretty jealous. Then the governors and the viceroys sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the reign. But they were unable to find any occasion or corruption because he was steadfast. And no negligence or corruption was found in him. Then these men said, we shall find occasion against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his Allah. Drop down to 10. And Daniel, when he knew that well, that's what it says, but I thought there was supposed to be a decree there, or interdict. Anyway, and Daniel, when he knew that the writing was signed, went home and in his upper room, with his windows open toward Jerusalem, knelt down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his Allah, as he had done before. So what happened is that they were like, dude, we're going to get the sovereign, Darius, to come over and write a law that says if anybody prays to anybody other than the sovereign, then they get thrown to the lions. And they knew that Daniel was going to do it. They knew Daniel did it 3 times a day. And when Daniel got through with it, he said, doesn't matter, I got to go spend time with Yahweh. Quality time. Now something interesting happens with that. So they go and they throw Daniel in the pit, and the king's like, dude, I've been hoodwinked. I can't believe this. And he was so upset that he fasted all night. Remember, this is the king of all Persia doing this. That's a pretty big deal. And so, verse 19. Then the sovereign rose up early in the morning and hurried to the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he called with a grieved voice to Daniel. The sovereign spoke and said, Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living Allah, has your Allah, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? Then Daniel said to the sovereign, O sovereign, live forever. My Allah has sent his messenger and has shut the lion's mouth. And they did not harm me because I was found innocent before him. And also before you, O sovereign, I have done no harm. All right, so I thought it was very interesting that Daniel liked to spend time with Yahweh, and when he was in his time of need, he sent a messenger down there to spend time with him. Quality time. All right? Yeshua was in the habit of spending time with Yahweh. Let's go check that out. Turn over to Matthew 14:23. Actually, y'all got to turn there. It's a quick one. Matthew 14:23. And having dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. And when the evening had come, he was alone there. So he went to go spend one-on-one time with Yahweh. Then again in Luke 6:12. And in those days it came to be when he went out on the mountain to pray and was spending the night in prayer with Elohim. Right? So he wasn't just like doing it haphazardly or anything. He actually devoted quite a bit of time to it. Matter of fact, if I remember correctly, in Matthew 4 and Luke 4, he went out there for 40 days and 40 nights and was with them. Matter of fact, it seems like Moshe did that. He was there for 40 days and 40 nights. We've got lots of examples of that. Matter of fact, Enoch went walking with Elohim. And then he was no more, for Yahweh took him. He's one of the guys that spent most of the time with Yahweh, I guess. So Yahweh is high, I guess, on quality time. So if we're supposed to do that with Yahweh, do you think Yahweh would like to do it with us? You bet he does. Turn over to Leviticus 23.
We want to party with us.
Ma'am?
We want to party with us.
He does want to party with us. He wants to do it on a regular basis. He wants to be with us. He wants to be with us as a group and in individuals. But right here, he commands us saying, hey, I'm going to get together with y'all. All right? Leviticus 23, 1 and 2. And Yahweh said to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the appointed times of Yahweh, which you are to proclaim, are set apart gatherings. My appointed times are these. He goes into Sabbath, then he goes into all the feast days. All right? Yahweh wants to spend time with you, and you want to spend time with Yahweh. That's the love language of quality time. All right? What about gift giving? Do you think we're supposed to give gifts to Yahweh? Do you think we're showing him love when we do that? Let's take a look. Is it just offerings? Go to Deuteronomy 16:16. It can be offerings, but what kind? This is from my last summer. 16, verses 16 and 17. Now this little font is tiny. that or I'm getting older than I think. All right, 16, 16, and 17. 3 times a year, all your males appear before Yahweh, your Elohim, in the place which he chooses. At the festival of unleavened bread, and at the festival of weeks, and at the festival of booths, and none should appear before Yahweh empty-handed, but each one with the gift of his hand, according to the blessing of Yahweh, your Elohim, which he has given you. Now, if you'll remember, I talked about this in a sermon before, where that empty right there doesn't mean just with an offering, it's with everything that you have. And that's how we're supposed to set up our goals and things like that, and how we're supposed to give him of all the things that we have. And so, Yahweh kind of likes gifts. All right? Now, does Yahweh give us gifts? Sure he does. Go look at James 1:17. When I was driving over here behind Miss Daisy, I was thinking about all the kinds of different things that Yahweh had given. You know, he gave Sarah a baby at a very old age. He gave Hannah a baby, because her womb was closed up. He gave of the fruits of the Spirit. He gave the promised land. He's given us all kinds of things. But in James 1:17, it says, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no change, for shadow or turning. It's pretty cool. He gives us gifts, huh? All right, what about acts of service? Do you think Yahweh's into acts of service? What makes you think that? Yeah, let's turn over to Deuteronomy 5. I told you I was going to read a bunch of scripture today. One side to the other. Doesn't seem to be a lot of Deuteronomy, though. All right, Deuteronomy 5, and we're going to read 1 through 10. And Moshe had called all Israel and said to them, hear, O Israel, the laws and the right rulings which I speak in your hearing today, and you shall learn them and guard to do them. Yahweh our Elohim made a covenant with us at Horeb. Yahweh did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us, those who are here today, and all who are alive. Yahweh spoke with you face to face on the mountain from the midst of the fire. I stood between Yahweh and you at that time to declare to you the words of Yahweh, for you were afraid because of the fire, and you did not go up on the mountain, saying, I am Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. You have no other mighty ones against my face. You do not make for yourselves a carved image, any likeness of which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them or serve them, for I, Yahweh your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers upon the children to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing kindness to the thousands of, will y'all read that for me? Who love me and guard my commands. That's his act of service right there. If you love me, guard my commandments. What's interesting, though, is he tells us that right before he gives us the 10 commandments over in Exodus 20. I'll read it for you real quick. This is going to be Exodus 20, 1 through 6. And Elohim spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery. You have no other mighty ones against my face. It's almost like we just read this. You do not make for yourself a carved image, or any likeness of that which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them or serve them, for I, Yahweh your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers of the children to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing kindness to thousands, to those who love me and guard my commandments. Yahweh does like acts of service, and Yahweh does acts of service for us as well. Have y'all ever read the blessings and the curses? All right. Have you ever read it instead of it saying, blessed are you? Have you ever turned around and read it and said, blessed am I? Oh man, it changes it. I don't want to do this out loud with everybody. This is something you might want to go do by yourself. But all of a sudden, you realize the service that Yahweh is doing for you. Blessed am I when I go out. Blessed is my kneading bowl. Blessed is the fruit of my womb. Well, it's not my womb, but anyway. All these different things, he's blessing you. And those are the services that Yahweh gives you. It's a really cool thing because it's one of those things where he's showing you the 5 love languages and you're showing it back to him. Makes you feel kind of good on the inside. Now, I'll be honest, touch was a hard one because nobody touched Yahweh that I know of. And maybe he's withholding that until we get into the kingdom and we can run up and give Papa a hug. Maybe that's what's up. I don't know, but either way, that was not one that I could touch on. Pardon the pun.
But he does.
Ma'am?
He does.
He does?
When we praise him,
Uh-huh.
when we pray,
Yeah.
we can feel it.
This is true.
I personally, I convinced with his love when I am praising and praying.
That's really cool information about hugs in this one. That's really awesome. I'll tell you about it in a minute. I didn't know about it. Ashley helped me with this one today because I was crazy. But anyway, what about words of affirmation? Does Yahweh like words of affirmation? Yes. Okay. Over in, y'all know David was like a prolific praiser of Yahweh. He would sit there and he'd talk about Yahweh left and right, and how awesome he was, and how he was this and he was that, and it was so great. Matter of fact, in Acts 13:22, they even said, and having removed, he said of them to David as sovereign, to whom also gave witness and said, I have found David, the son of Ishai, a man after my own heart, who shall do all my desires. So he was out there with, David had some faults, but one of the things that he did was he was a prolific talker about Yahweh and how great he was. Yahweh even talked about himself being great whenever he went out there to go proclaim his name. In Exodus 34, he said, Yahweh, Yahweh, and El compassionate, and showing favor, patient, and great in kindness and truth, watching over the kindness of thousands, forgiving crookedness and transgression and sin, but by no means leaving unpunished. Visited the crookedness of the fathers upon the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. Matter of fact, I don't know if you thought about this. How many of you know the Master's Prayer? Last prayer? Or the, what's it called? I call it the Master's Prayer. Anyway, turn over to Matthew 6. There you go, Lord's Prayer. Yeshua said, this then is how you shall pray. Matthew 6, and all we have to do is read 6, 9, and 10. This then is the way that you should pray. Our Father, who is in the heavens, let your name be set apart. Let your reign come and let your desire be done on earth as it is in heaven. The very first thing he did was he said, when y'all go to pray, start out by telling Yahweh how awesome he is, and how great he is, and how set apart he is. Now Yahweh has some pretty big words of affirmation for you too. You know that? Let's turn back over to Deuteronomy. We'll be Deuteronomy 7. We're going to read 6 through 14. I want y'all to read this one with me. The reason why this is important is because Yahweh's talking about you when he said this.
You said 7, 6 through 14.
Yes, ma'am. 7, 6 through 14 in Deuteronomy. For you, everyone sitting here, you are a set apart people to Yahweh your Elohim. Yahweh your Elohim has chosen you, every one of you sitting here, to be a people for himself, a treasured possession above all the people on the face of the earth. Yahweh did not set his love on you, nor choose you because you were more numerous than any other people, for you were the least of all the people, but because of Yahweh loving you, and because of him guarding the oath which he swore to your fathers. Yahweh has brought you out with a strong hand and redeemed you from the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh, sovereign of Mitzrayim. And you shall know that Yahweh your Elohim, he is Elohim, the trustworthy El, guarding the covenant and the kindness for thousands of generations with those who love him and those who guard his commands, but repaying those who hate him to their face to destroy them. He does not delay to do so with him who hates him. He repays him to his face. And you shall guard the command and the laws and the right rulings which I command you today to do them. And it shall be, because you hear these right rulings and shall guard to do them, that Yahweh your Elohim shall guard with you the covenant and the kindness which he swore to your fathers, and shall love you, and bless you, and increase you, and shall bless the fruit of your womb, and the fruit of your land, and your grain, and your new wine, and your oil, the increase of your cattle, and the offspring of your flock, in the land of which he swore to your fathers to give you. Blessed are you above all peoples. That's a pretty strong word of affirmation, wouldn't you say? Yahweh just said that you are a set apart people to himself, a treasured possession. You are blessed above all people, and he set his love on you. He does it again over in Deuteronomy 26. I want to read it one more time. I'll read this part. It's 26, 16 through 19. You can turn there if you want to. Today, Yahweh your Elohim is commanding you to do these laws and right rulings, and you shall guard and do them with all your heart and with all your being. You have today caused Yahweh to proclaim to be your Elohim, and walk in your ways, and guard his laws, and his commands, and his right rulings, and to obey his voice. And Yahweh has caused you to proclaim today to be his people, a treasured possession, as he has spoken to you, and to guard all his commands, so as to set you high above all nations which he has made, for a praise, and for a name, and for esteem, and for you to be set apart people to Yahweh your Elohim, as he has spoken. It's pretty awesome, isn't it? Yahweh thinks pretty highly of you, doesn't it? All right, so we can see how the 5 love languages apply to the first command and how it does with Yahweh and how we're supposed to love him. But what about the second commandment? And just to remind you, it's in Matthew 22:39, and it says the second command is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Now, I'll be honest. It's oftentimes easy to apply those 5 love languages to your neighbor, specifically if you've gotten to know him. But what about yourself? You see, that commandment didn't say just love your neighbor. It said love your neighbor as yourself. How much time are you spending on figuring that part of the puzzle out? Because that one's kind of hard. I know it is for me. When it comes to the 5 love languages, are you putting any effort to apply them to yourself? That's a little bit weird to think about, isn't it? It's for me anyway. Take words of affirmation, for instance. Now, I'm really good at pointing out other people. I really like to talk about how good other people are. I like to mind the good in other people is what I like to say. If I've got nothing else, I'll comment your shoes and say, hey, I like your shoes. If you come in and you just got your hair lowered, I'll say, hey, you got a great haircut. Or if you've got new dyes, I learned a long time ago from my wife, whatever woman it is, if she just got something done, say, I'm not sure what it is, but it looks good. And they will smile and tell you about it. All right? Sometimes I don't notice what it is, but I'm like, something's different, and you look nice today. Oh, look at my hair doing. You know, you're like, awesome, I have no idea. So I'm really good at that. But in my own mind, when it comes to me, sometimes I'm not very kind to myself. Anybody else experience that? Yeah. And it should not be that way, should it? Why is it though? I think it's because we know our own faults. We know our own weaknesses. We know all kinds of things about ourselves. But I think it's something bigger than that. I think it is something that Hashatan, Satan, has put in place a long time ago that is trying to devalue your self-worth so that you don't believe the maker and the master of the universe who just told you what he thought about you and what you should be thinking of yourself. And I think by doing that, he uses it as a wedge to make it to where you can't keep that command that Yahweh's commanding you and making it where it's something that's undoable. But I'm here to tell you, you can do it. Take that last part in Deuteronomy 26:16. Yahweh didn't say I was drunk. Yahweh didn't say I was weak. Yahweh didn't say I was fat. Yahweh didn't say I was slow. Yahweh didn't say I was letting my family down. Yahweh didn't say a whole bunch of stuff. Yahweh said he loves me. He said he loves you. He called me and he called you a treasured possession. He even said you are esteemed to me. A praise. A praise. Let that sink in. That was in Deuteronomy 26:19. What am I saying about myself, and what are you saying about yourself when nobody's listening? When it's just you by yourself? Are you being kind to yourself? I'll give you a great for instance, and I hope she don't get mad at me. This came to be right before we came here. Ashley was talking about herself and about a particular part of her body that she's not fond of. And she was talking about how it was gross and stuff like that, and how she didn't like it. And I said, girl, are you being kind to yourself right now? She got quiet. Because she knew we were talking about the 5 love languages today. And then I started turning around how I see that particular part of her and how the good qualities are about that. And she teared up and she told me thank you afterwards. All right? So I was able to do that because she and I are a God. We are one. And so I was able to love myself by doing that. Which, by the way, married people, that's part of it. But she was sitting there tearing herself down like that off of something that I thought was, I can see it. I mean, I get that way with myself too. But you've got to be on guard, because if you don't, Satan will sneak in. He will devalue you, and you won't be believing what Yahweh just said about you. That ought not be. We know our wounds, we know our weaknesses, we know our transgressions, and we know our faults. But guess what? So does Yahweh. And he still said that about you. Now, do y'all remember where I said the second great command came from? It was in Leviticus, right? I want to read it real quick to you. It says, "Do not hate your brother in your heart. Reprove your neighbor for certain, and bear no sin because of him. Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh." You are one of the children of your people, and you are not allowed to bear a grudge against yourself. So those weaknesses and those hurts that Yahweh has said, hey, you've turned from that and you're doing righteousness, and I remember them no more, like it says in Ezekiel 33. You need to find peace with that and hear what the Master of the universe is saying and how much he loves you. And let that not be a way that Satan can attack you. Matthew 15:11 through 20. "Not that which goes into a mouth defiles the man, but that which comes out of the mouth. These defile a man." Then his taught ones came and said to him, "Do you not know that the Pharisees stumbled when they heard this word?" But he answered and said, "Every plant which my heavenly Father has not planted shall be uprooted. Leave them alone, for they are blind leaders of the blind. And if a blind leads the blind, they shall both fall into a ditch." And Kepha answering said to him, "Explain this parable to us." And Yahshua said, "Are you also without understanding? Do you not understand that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and is cast out into the sewer?" Listen to this part. "But what comes out of the mouth comes from the heart, and these defile a man. For out of the heart comes forth wicked reasonings." I'm not good enough. "Murders." You can kill yourself by your words. "Adulteries, whorings, thefts, false witnesses, slanders. These defile a man. But to eat with unwashed hands do not." You've got to get control of that self-talk. If you're saying things that are not true, you got to get rid of them, y'all, because it will eat you up and it will murder you, just like he said. How many of y'all believe that Yahweh is trustworthy? I believe so, because he said he was. And if I'm withholding words of affirmation for myself, after Yahweh just said all that great stuff about me, who's the liar there? It's me. Because Yahweh is a trustworthy elder. And he just said that he calls me his treasured possession, that I'm appraised, I'm esteemed, and that he loves me. So, I probably spent more time on that than I should have, because words of affirmation are my highest thing ever. And so I want to think about the other love languages and see how we can apply them to ourselves as well. For instance, how could you do acts of service for yourself? How weird, right? It's not so weird if you think about it. You can go and you can plant that garden that you've been wanting to plant and get the satisfaction associated with that. You can hang that picture that you've wanted to hang forever. You can go over and restore whatever that classic car is that you wanted to do. You can go and do whatever the thing is that you need to do for yourself. For me, say what?
Chocolate cake?
You can go, hey, I'm going to be honest. All right, so Ashley said there are two other, I'll just say the one. She said there's one other that should be on this for men, and it's food, okay? But in my mind, food is acts of service. And so we had to have that talk. She was like, okay, well, that makes sense. But anyway, I feel very, very loved whenever Ashley makes me fried chicken, broccoli and cheese, mashed potatoes, and some kind of roll, in particular crescent rolls. That's a very specific thing, isn't it? It's my birthday meal. But I feel very loved when she does that. There's a lot of things she makes that I'm very loved when I do that. But that's the way that I see that. But you can do that for yourself if that's how you feel. Yeah, I love chicken. I'm going to tell you what, I'll wear it out. Frank Sonic sauce all day long.
Well, acts of service for yourself or when you eat right.
That could be it too. So that's a very valid point. So my next thing is I'm going to say, what's quality time? How can you be spending time with yourself? And is that even really a thing? For me, it's a big thing right now because I got four kids, and all of them like to talk to you at the same time. And so you'll go like batty if you don't get off and get by yourself. And so my acts of service to myself is whenever I'm out exercising. So I get to, whenever I'm out swimming and when I'm biking and when I'm running or when me and Ashley are at the gym, that's my time to be able to be there. I particularly like the ones where I'm not at the gym because there's stuff going on in the gym and it's hard to just like let your mind go and really do the thinking that you need to do. But when I'm swimming, dude, I can't hear nothing. All I got is the water, my breath, me, Yahweh, and my thoughts. And that's what I got. When I'm on my bike, I can sit there and just go, and as long as nobody runs me over, I can look at all the beautiful landscapes that are out where I live, and I can go and I can think, and I can problem solve, and I can recenter. And I mean, I've been upset before at something. Went for a bike ride, came back, and realized I was the idiot, and walked in there and made apologies for it, and everything got better. All right, so it's very important to love yourself that way. All right? What about words of affirmation? So we talked about that some, but we do something at my house that you may want to adopt. It's called an I am card. All right? What an I am card is it's a list of things that you either are that are positive or things that you want to become that are positive. And you read that list to yourself every day. For instance, I'm a man of Elohim. I do not quit. I am a great, not a good. I am a great husband. I am a great father. I'm a great son, brother, neighbor, and friend. Those are things that are on my I am card. And that way, when I tell myself that, I hear I am those things, and it gives me affirmation so that I can go and pursue those things better. We just started our kids with them, and it's really, really good because I already see the differences they're making. We did it as they were kids. I would come in and do affirmations with them when they were babies. Anyway, I want to forget. I've had Steph and Ariel both been going down, walking down the hall and saying some of the affirmations to themselves. So I'm like, yeah, I did it. Woo, I got it. But you can do the same thing for yourself, and you should. All right, so words of affirmation. Gift giving was something I had to ask Ashley about because, once again, I'm on gift giving. And so she started talking about this could be tangible things. You could go get you a special something. You might want to get the shoes, you might want to get the watch, you might want to get the car or whatever. And I was like, yeah, but that just sounds so hollow. She's like, sometimes it's not. Or you know, what if it's you went and booked the vacation? All right, so now she's speaking my language because I'm a go do it with you person, not just a thing person. I'll spend money on a vacation, but I'm not going to spend money on a car type deal. All right? But then she said, there's other gifts that you ought to open yourself up to. Like the gift of friendship. I said, You know, because sometimes you've been wounded in some ways and you might be closing yourself off such that you're not allowing people to be your friends. That's a tough spot to be in. That can be withholding a lot of love from you. I forgot to mention that. One of the things that Gary Chapman said in the 5 love languages is that if you're not sure what your primary love language is, see which one of those you withhold whenever you get mad at somebody. That can oftentimes be the one that, because like if you're going to stomp off and not be around on quality time, might be your top one. If you take that, whatever you just bought them, that big chocolate cake, and you slam it on the floor, might be gift giving or acts of service. I don't know. Depends on which one it is. But either way, that's a good way to be able to do that. Now, going back to the friends thing, the gift of friendship. If you're withholding that, you may have a hurt that you need to go and investigate, but allow yourself to be opened up because having this life with lots of friends really makes it more fulfilling. And that's what Yahweh designed us to be like. He even said it's not good for man to be alone. It could be something else. It could be the gift of music. You know, if you're sitting over there, you want to learn how to play an instrument, or whenever we first got married, golly, they had a total different house than I did. I came from I forgot how to say it. He who speaks loudly to his neighbor in the morning shall have it reckoned to him as a curse. That's how my house was. Ashley's house was country music on like 100 in the morning as soon as you wake up. What was that? But anyway, so it got quiet in our house for a while. But giving yourself the opportunity to be able to go and enjoy music, that could be a gift. There's all kinds of gifts that Yahweh has put out here for us that you can go. The gift of learning. There's all kinds of things that you can go and put in there where you're giving yourself that. All right? The gift of touch was a hard one. How you gonna touch yourself? That's weird, right? It sounds weird how to say it out loud. I'm sorry, baby. But there's something to touch that I didn't know until today, y'all. I found some very cool statistics about hugs. Who in here likes to be hugged? Might like to get hugged a whole lot more here in just a little bit, all right? So they have done tests on people, and they've done all kinds of studies about hugs and found out some very information. And particularly, since COVID hit, they did some crazy stuff to people. I can't believe they did this. First one, this happened in 2021. It was over at the University of Frankfurt in Germany. They took 159 people and they divided them up into 3 different groups. And what they did was that they were going to test how hugs would affect your cortisol levels. So the first thing you had to do was you had to spit in a cup. Then you walked into the room and you either got a 20-second hug from the assistant that was there, you hugged yourself for 20 seconds. I'm a big guy. Or you had to make a paper airplane. Okay? Without fail, they found a significant difference in the 3 groups. The 2 groups that got hugs, whether they were hugging themselves or whether they were getting a hug from an assistant, which might be a little bit weird if you don't know the person. The 20-second hug reduced cortisol across the board. All right, and so cortisol is your stress hormone. It does all kinds of funny things to you. So that's a very interesting study. The next study was in 2014. I can't believe they did this to people. All right, they took 404 people and they divided them up. And they had half of them got hugs and the other half did not get hugs. Then they stuck them in a room and they introduced a virus that could cause the common cold. People signed up for that. They didn't say what country it was in, I don't think. But either way, I was like, dude. But anyway, so what they found was very significant, all right? The virus on the people that had hugs was 32% less effective, meaning 32% of the people that got hugs did not get sick. And I was looking at the snapshot of it, and you had to pay to get the rest of the study, because I actually like reading the studies, not somebody telling you about the study. And I didn't get the rest of it, but what they said was that there was a significant difference in how quickly people that did get sick healed after getting hugs. So they would come in and give them hugs afterwards, and there was both a reduce in severity of the common cold and how quickly it healed because they were getting hugs. So hugs are a pretty cool thing.
That's why we had to stay 6 feet away from other people.
That's right, because touch is bad. Well, what's interesting about that is not only does it reduce your cortisol, but it also produces a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin is a feel-good hormone that is a long-lasting hormone. Y'all heard of dopamine, right? Dopamine is that thing that kids are addicted to because they're playing video games and all that. And you get it off cocaine and all kinds of things like that, right? Oxytocin has the same feel to it, but you get it from doing stuff like that, from touching. That is the only, well, that's not the only way it's released, but that is one of the main ways it's released. It's released through touch, it's released during childbirth, a couple of other things. But it's responsible for feeling good when you have social bonds and things of that nature. And what it does is it reduces stress and allows you to feel better too. And we almost only get it via some sort of human touch. So that's a really cool thing. So hugs are a very important thing. And if you're withholding yourself from getting hugs or some sort of touch, you may need to investigate that. That being said, going back to if somebody doesn't appreciate the way you're showing them love, and you come in and you try to attack somebody, Houston's a different story. We're playing with Houston. He's just got idiosyncrasies. But you may be dealing with somebody that has trauma, all right? Don't push that issue. That's not fair to them. You're trying to push your love on them, and they don't deserve that, all right? Don't push that on them. That's all I'm going to say about that, but just be mindful of that. If you come in and you try to hug somebody, don't try to force it on them if they like to freak out. They could have sensory issues too. That's something else, so just pay attention to that. Yes, ma'am?
If you ever are genuinely trying to meet someone with the love that is in you and you encounter that, the simplest thing is to say, what do you need right now?
I like that.
Love someone that has the thoughts and boundaries to loving you. What do you need right now?
That's really good. I like that. So I got this in here. This is like one of my last verses. I'm not going to do it until we get to the end. How about that? All right, but I didn't say it like that, but thank you. Now, I would be remiss if I'm to let this out because we're talking about loving ourselves. There's a difference between loving yourself and being self-centered and being selfish. Okay? That's not what I'm talking about. If you're trying to buy gifts to be able to fill a hole in yourself, that's not going to happen. If you're going around telling everybody how great you are and you're not beating on your chest, what that really means is that you've got a hole inside of you where you don't believe the things you're saying and you're trying to get everybody else to do that. All right? Whenever we see people that are selfish and self-centered, there is a big problem inside of them that has to do with not having love. That's not the same thing as listening to the maker and the master of the universe telling you, I love you and you're my treasured possession and I want you to see you with the value that I see in you. Okay, those are two totally different things and I don't want them to get confused. I want to say this one more time about what Brother Paul said over in 1 Corinthians, because we always talk about it whenever we get around weddings and things, but I want you to think about the type of love that you should have for yourself as you're going through this. It's not talking about the selfish love, but the love that you should have for yourself. So 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8, the love that you should have for yourself should be patient. It should be kind. It should not be envy. It should not have any envy, and it should not boast. It shouldn't be puffed up. Those are the folks that are having issues that have those things. It doesn't behave indecently. That would be kind of like some weird touch stuff. It does not seek its own. It is not provoked. It reckons not the evil. It does not rejoice over unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. The love that you should have for yourself covers all, believes all, expects all, endures all, and that love never fails. The reason why that love never fails is because that is the love that Yahweh gave you. That's what He sees in you, and that's the way that He treats you. I want to leave y'all with a song.
I'm already singing a song.
Are you singing a song?
Your love never fails.
No, it's not that one. That would have been a good one. This one's by Lauren Daigle. All right? Have you ever heard the song You Say?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's a great one. I should have brought my guitar and let Ashley play it for you. Or I'd play it, she'd sing it. But this is how it goes. She says, I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie tells me that I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again, just because I need who I am, because I need to know. You say I'm loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I'm strong when I think I'm weak. You say I am held when I am falling short, and when I don't belong, you say I am yours. And I believe. I believe what you say to me. I believe. The only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my worth. In you I find my identity. You say I'm loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I'm weak. And you say I am held when I'm falling short. And when I don't belong, you say I am yours. And I believe. I believe what you say to me. These are the things that Yahweh says about you. These are the things you should be saying about yourself. And these are how you should interact with Him. And if you're having trouble with this, what Laura said was really good. I got this out of Matthew 7 and 8. It says, ask, and it shall be given to you. When me and Ashley are having trouble sometimes, I'll go and ask her, what do you need? Just like she said. And truly, if we had, there's been times she's had to ask me what I needed because she didn't realize she was doing something. And it works out. Seek and you shall find. You got to go find how to be able to put those things in place. Knock, and it shall be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, hallelujah. And he who seeks finds. And to him who knocks, it shall be open to you. Y'all, love is a physiological and a psychological requirement for your well-being. You need to love yourself to fulfill the great commands, which are, love Yahweh with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make His face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up His face upon you and give you perfect and complete peace. Hallelujah.
Yeah.